We are privileged to have with us today Ms. Debra David, JJ's sister, who's going to share some memories with us. Ms. David is an alumnus of SAR Academy and has been an active SAR parent for the past 22 years. She's the parent of 4 SAR high school graduates and also of current 10th grader Julia David. We are very privileged to welcome her here this morning.
Good morning. Shana Tova. I hope it's an easy fast for everyone today. And fun factoid about JJ, like most of us, he hated fasting. He was very tall and slim, and he had a great appetite, and he loved to eat, and fasting was especially difficult for him. But he had one fasting ritual, which was that at the end of every fast day, he would have the same breakfast meal. He would start with breakfast, then lunch, and then dinner, all in one sitting, which was always awe-inspiring to all of us. And he would spend most of his day, his fast day, sort of holding off his hunger pangs by thinking about what those meals would be. And right about now, actually, he would be telling me all about his breakfast plan, which usually made me really hungry, but somehow helped his pain. Anyway, just thought I'd share that with you. This year's theme at SAR is tzedek, justice or righteousness. Tzedek is a cherish or root word of the Hebrew language that is found in many forms, such as tzedakah, tzadik, to name a few. And these words swirl around together and are linked in the cosmic worlds of Jewish liturgy and law. And tzedek was indeed a core value in my brother JJ's life, both personally and professionally. His definition of tzedek, or justice, would probably read as fairness, equality, balance of power, and righteousness. Many of you have looked at the beautiful art installation in the cafe area of this building, a piece commissioned by the Jesselson family in memory of JJ, and you have likely read the pasuk, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice you shall pursue. My parents, along with the artist, chose this pasuk out of thousands of powerful psukim in the Tanakh to represent my brother's values and special character. But tzedek is not necessarily a value or idea that is innate or instinctive to human beings. In fact, most of what we know about biology and human nature is that the world has evolved through natural selection, or more familiarly, survival of the fittest. The strongest or most fit will persevere, and the weak will not survive. It is a concept and characteristic in human nature that certainly contradicts the idea of tzedek. Tzedek is not a trait found in our DNA. It is a learned behavior, one we acquire through experience and education. We learn it from our parents, in our school, and from each other. And it is why, in the Pasuk in Dvarim, the word tzedek is repeated. It is to emphasize the importance of pursuing it. It is not our biological natural way to seek or desire fairness or righteousness. We must learn it and strive for it. So today I would like to tell you a little bit about how JJ's personal character developed and how tzedek became a driving force in his life, personally and professionally. And while I have just finished telling you about the nature of tzedek and biology, if there was an argument for the existence of a tzedek chromosome, I believe my brother JJ would be the case study. Even at a very young age, he seemed to be hardwired for goodness and fairness. In my family, we were 5 siblings born within 6 years, which meant little more than a year between us. We were a gaggle of little kids, each other's playmates, and very close. Every summer, our family would spend our entire summer vacation in Gloucester, Massachusetts. It was great family time away from our New York routine. Most Sundays, my parents would take us to neighboring Rockport, a touristy seaside town, and we would head to the country store, a quaint little tourist shop that sold penny candy. If you are not familiar with penny candy, there was a time on this earth when you could buy a piece of candy for 1 penny, or sometimes 2 or 3 pieces of candy for 1 penny. My mother would give each of us 15 cents, point out the non-kosher candy that was off limits, and we would buy our stash for the week. When we got home, we would pour out our bags onto our beds, or at least what was left after the car ride home, and survey our treasures. Sometimes we would even make trades. But early on, for some reason, my oldest brother always seemed to have more candy. His bag always looked fuller. My brother JJ would complain to me that it was unfair that our older brother was getting more money for candy. Unfairness, as in it's not fair, was a value word in my brother's young vocabulary. This went on for a few weeks, with my mother always waving him off and saying that everyone got the exact same amount of money, even showing him the coins. But JJ continued to be frustrated. Finally, my older brother revealed his system for choosing candies, which was to look for the ones that were 3 or more pieces a penny, which he would often trade and sell to his friends, and hence his larger portion. When JJ found this out, he was relieved. That he had missed out on a few weeks of extra candy did not bother him, because he now understood in the context of fairness, or in his mind, that justice was restored to our home. As he grew older, JJ's desire for fairness moved from his own concerns to the concerns of others. He was very popular in his SAR elementary school class. He was friends with everyone, moving easily between different social groups, and included everyone in his circle of friends. He marched to his own beat, had his own style, and was even a little quirky. He would wear bright-colored, fuzzy socks and multiple T-shirts at once. I think the record was 18 in one day, and on those days he looked like the Incredible Hulk. But needless to say, he was a bright and beloved character in his grade. He was also smart and athletic. At recess, he would often be chosen as the captain of one of the Gaga, dodgeball, or soccer teams. As captain, you may know, you would take turns choosing your team from the pool of kids wanting to play. Years later, a friend of his told me this sweet story about JJ. This friend was not a great athlete, but wanted to play. He would go to recess, but always dreaded the selection of teams, as he was invariably the last pick. At some point, he stopped going to recess. JJ noticed and asked him why he wasn't playing anymore. When this friend told him he was embarrassed to always be the last one chosen, JJ encouraged him to return to the group and said if he was captain, he would help him, and the friend agreed to return. The very next day, JJ was made a captain. When it came time for JJ to choose, he chose one of the best players, skipping over his friend. This boy's heart sank because he thought JJ had forgotten the promise. In the second round, it happened again. But in the third round, JJ picked him. He told me that he went over to JJ to say thanks and said that for a minute he thought JJ had forgotten him. JJ laughed and said he would never forget, and that was the end of the conversation. This went on for a while, and whenever JJ was captain, this boy would get picked in a different round, but always somewhere in the middle of the selections. JJ's friend told me that at first he didn't understand, but soon after he realized that JJ must have thought a great deal about this, and not only for him, but for other classmates and friends in the rotation. He realized later that if JJ had chosen him first, it would have been as if he had chosen him last. It would have highlighted the fact that he was a weak player, and it would have made the other more competitive players mad. He told me that JJ was protecting him and raising his self-esteem at the same time. He said there was no better friend than JJ. His thoughtfulness knew no bounds, and his sense of fairness came from the desire to balance the scales of justice, to help the underdog, and to raise up those who were at a disadvantage. He never did it for the glory. It was always quiet, behind the scenes, helping a friend. It is how he made all his decisions in life when it came to others, and it moved from his personal circle of friends to the global community he lived in. It is what motivated him to fight for Soviet Jewry, for the handicapped, for orphans, and for the many organizations he worked for and championed during his lifetime. He knew he could make a difference. He believed he could bring justice and fairness to the world, whether it was to one person or an entire people. Though I was his big sister and I took pride in the caring role when we were younger, as we grew older and as our relationship matured, I would often turn to him for advice. He would listen very intently to whatever my conflict or decision was about, and then he would take his time to answer me. His advice was always spot on. After he died, I felt adrift. I would find myself longing to call him for advice or support and missing him terribly. I remember one of my kids coming home from school one day crying and telling me he was being bullied by a friend at school. My first thought, as crazy mom, was to take that kid into the alleyway and handle things. I remember feeling so sad and thinking I needed my JJ. And I remembered saying to myself, what would JJ do? At first I thought, well, he'd do the same thing. Or, because he loved my kids like his own. Or maybe he would go out and buy a handgun, I don't know. And then I laughed at the complete absurdity of that thought. And then a funny thing happened. I felt a strange sense of relief, and my anger lifted from me, and that helped me see clearly again, and it enabled me to handle the situation calmly and rationally. Soon after, it became a mantra for me, WWJJD, what would JJ do? I would think of that acronym in my head and try to look at whatever difficult situation I was facing and think how JJ would approach it. And that pause has helped me so many times. I have thought a lot about JJ and his specialness and how he so innately possessed these ideas of fairness and compassion for others. And I have wondered how it was that someone so young could have such depth and understanding and thoughtfulness. And I thought how he cared so deeply and felt so angry about injustice, and that he channeled those feelings into his actions in his professional life and in fighting for social justice. And I have come to realize that at the core of JJ's definition of justice and goodness and righteousness was his empathy. It's not enough to feel compassion for others or the desire for fairness or justice. You have to have empathy. You have to put yourself in someone else's shoes to truly see their humanity or feel their joy or pain. You have to think about what it feels like to be the last one chosen at recess, or the one to be left out, or to be hungry, or sad, or powerless, or homeless. Because the minute we stop feeling empathy for others is the minute the world has lost. When Jewish people or any people are suffering somewhere else in the world, and we stop feeling their pain and caring about their suffering, especially when it seems far away or removed from us, we cease to be a just community. And like JJ, we have to believe that every person is a Tzelem Elokim, and therefore deserves our respect and care, and that each of us can make a difference in the world. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. We must run after justice, run with empathy and vigor. It's now 16 years since JJ's passing, and I still cry for him and miss him as deeply and heartbreakingly as I did the day he died. But he is with me every day, and especially in those moments when I have decisions to make that are difficult or require a little thought. WWJJD. What would JJ do? His tzedek and goodness guides me, and hopefully today I have shared a little bit of this with you. And I hope the next time you find yourself in a difficult place or position, and you are not sure what is the right thing to do, think of my acronym, WWJJD. And then think of the initials of a person who inspires you in that way, and insert their initials in the place of his. I promise you it will make your decision a little better. your world a little better, and your life a little better. And soon enough, someone will be inserting your initials there, and it will be your own voice of tzedek that will guide them and others, so that the chain of tzedek will continue for generations to come. Chatima v'chatima tova.